place shortly because, they're going to be underwater eventually.
Yeah, and that's hard to judge too. I mean, I just look back in this last winter and spring. I remember it was still snowing everywhere. They were cursing about it. So, I take it year by year. My biggest concern is really with the plastic waste, but it's something we took too long to notice.
Well, you know what? I have a friend who's a fisherman, up in Alaska, and he was telling me of, bottles, it basically with turtles and with the fish, dying from just, that, and whales dying from eating the trash, the plastic trash that's in the ocean. And it's a lot worse than people realize. There's big zones of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, now that China says, hey, we're not taking your plastic and burning it anymore, you guys are going to have to take care of it. That's when everybody started screaming. Oh, no, we don't have a place to go now. Of course, now it's ending up going to Taiwan and Malaysia, and soon they'll be inundated and they can't handle it. There's nowhere we can shove that problem. We have to take and do stuff with it. And I'm invested actually in a company that does pyrolysis. They take plastic of any kind and they turn it into ultra low sulfur fuel. So great. Doesn't need any refining, real straightforward. And that's just one option of many. I know a lot of people say, hey, we can make bikinis out of plastic. We can make this. The problem is you end up with another product that's going to have to go to the landfill. You're just slowing the process down a little. That's all.
Well, I still, I've read about, recyclable plastics, but even the recyclable plastics take years and years to break down.
Oh, yeah. And we only recycle about 9% of our plastic in the world. So it's not a really great option. And I get more concerned about what plastic does once it's in the ground, once it's in our food, once, if you go and buy a bottled water, you think you're having this clean water. It's been sitting in a plastic bottle in a hot truck. Now, we don't drink plastic bottled water in our cars when it sits. Why would we get it out of a truck? So I don't know what kind of hormones and issues we're being exposed to, but, it's going to be part of the groundwater too.
Well, not just that. I watched a news show back a couple of years ago. They were sampling all the major brand, bottled water. And, besides ripping people off, because some of these bottled waters you buy, you just go to your faucet and you're getting the exact same water. They just kind of maybe clean it up a little bit. But
yeah, like Nestle, ones like that. Yep.
Yeah, but then they started finding some bacteria in that water. Mm-hmm. And then they started finding some contamination from the plastic bottles leaching into the water. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know bottled water if it's good. Again, aluminum cans aren't good, too, because aluminum's bad for you.
Yes, aluminum. Yeah, I don't use aluminum foil at all anymore.
Well, I grew up, my great-grandfather, or my great-grandfather owned a company. They used to make these great big cookware, these big roasting pans and stuff with the lid. Mm-hmm. And they were made out of cast aluminum. And back years ago, you used to see, everybody used to have them. They put their roast in it, put their ham in it, and you put it in the oven. And then you wonder how many people have gotten Alzheimer's from it because they say that aluminum leaches in and doesn't go away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's stunning. I mean, then you get into Monsanto and our food supply and spraying with Roundup. And, it's just like we're being barraged. We worry about, things like being hit by a terrorist, but our, chances are we're going to get killed by our own technology that we thought would make our lives easier.
Well, yeah. I mean, how are the people in Turkey, that smoke probably 2 packs or 3 packs of cigarettes a day live to 100 and some years old? It's probably because of the food they eat, because everything here is processed, virtually everything. You go, I hate to say it, I'm going to get sued by McDonald's. Their patties are processed. You go Burger King, they got a plant here up in near Kent, Washington for McDonald's where they make the hamburger patties and stuff. It's processed because I had a relative working there telling me, hey, that meat is processed. And processed meat is very bad for you. Oh,
yeah. Barbecuing is bad for you. Yeah, there's quite a list. I guess you have to decide what you want to go from.
Well, I don't know if it's down everything. Okay, cigarette smoking is bad for you. cigar smoking's bad for you. But they have in buying, food, all your food pretty much processed, that's all bad for you. When you get past a certain age, sex is bad for you. So I come to a conclusion, just,
What a way to go.
well, I don't know. It depends. But, it all comes down, everything's bad for you. Like you don't use aluminum foil. That's a smart move. But I don't even like using the plastic wrap and wrapping food in it because I don't feel it's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I eat a lot of, I'm very big into produce and I love growing my own food, but everything has to be organic for me. I don't want anything that's been manipulated or sprayed if I can help it. It's just those little things you do, and whether they accumulate or not. And then it all goes back to genetics. I mean, if you look at the people in Turkey, like you were saying, it could be just genetically they can handle cigarettes in a different way than a lot of other people can. In my family, if people smoke, they got emphysema. But in my friend's family, all the people that smoke got cancer. So, there's a certain genetic component and all of that as to how you process and handle pollutants and nasty things.
Well, I think it's right in their DNA because in my entire life, I'm 66, but I remember when I was like in my early 20s, I used to ride a road bike and a mountain bike a lot. That's before I got old and fat. But I used to ride with this guy who was in his 90s. And he would get on his road bike and we would ride 20, 25 miles. After about 5 miles, I was dying trying to keep up with this guy. I mean, the guy was not just old physically, but emotionally, he was like equal to somebody probably 30. I mean, a lot of people when they get old, they kind of like repeat themselves a lot. They don't have no life left. This guy was sharp as they could be. And then a business I used to be a general manager for in Tacoma. It was a chain of professional camera stores back in the early 2000s. One of our sales reps was 85 years old. He was about 6'3". He still skied every season.
I like that guy.
Yeah. And I mean, he was wiry. And I didn't even know because I rode a motorcycle since I was like 18 off and on. I didn't even know he rode a motorcycle. But, he's sitting there saying, I got a half acre, my garden's a half acre. I plant all this stuff in there. And I spend all my time doing that. And then one day, he comes to the store to try to sell his stuff. And I walk out I thought to his car. Now, it wasn't a car. It was a Harley. And I said, how often do you ride that? And he goes, I put on probably about 10,000 miles a year on it. I'm going, 85?
Yeah.
Wow.
You think about it. I thought about this because of so many things I've done since my divorce. But, when you're a kid, you're always daydreaming, when I get a car and I have a license, I'm going to drive across country. I'm going to go all the way to the Pacific and I'm going to swim in the ocean and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I won't have to answer to anybody and I can, eat brownies for breakfast, whatever I want to do. And we lose that magic once we have adult responsibilities. And I think it's such a shame. I mean, I am 55 years old and I have been known to build a blanket fort to watch scary movies in. So I don't see those limits. If it looks interesting, do it.
Well, you know what? That's what the problem is, especially in our country. You talk about like the Japanese and a lot of these countries, right? They live a lot longer, but they're more active. I mean, the older people hold jobs down longer. They stay active. Here, they don't. A lot of people, when they hit 65, their whole life is their front room on the sofa or on a recliner watching TV. They figured now, I'm 65, I'm retired now. And then they die off. They die off.
Yeah, that's such a shame. I mean, they should treat it like, wow, I'm free. It's like summer, as a kid. No school. I get to play. I love when I see people go out and the first thing they do after they retire is they buy a bike, or they go get a cabin somewhere. They uproot their life and live a completely different life. They go, forget it. I'm going to live on the beach. That's what I've always wanted to do. I'm thrilled to see that stuff. And it's a big part of the rest of my life is going to be inspiring middle-agers to take that risk while you can, because I spent every year of my marriage, every night, lying in bed thinking about all the things I would never do. I would never see another country. I would never do this. I would never do that. I'd never see the Northern Lights. I'd never publish a book. I'll never, the list was endless until I fell asleep. I just sort of passed out. And I don't think anybody should ever live with that thinking, hey, when I get to the end of my life, did I just simply live? Breathe in, breathe out.
Well, it's nice, have a philosophy to be able to do things and enjoy life. I had a relative, actually, him and my aunt and uncle. They were so greedy. I mean, when I was a little kid, he worked for Boeing's as a machinist. He worked every hour overtime he could. Then they took their money and bought as much property as they could, and then bought houses and apartment buildings, right? They were really rich. Christmas time, I expected to get a bubble bath bottle that's been used, and all the bubble bath is out. I get, the Walt Disney figure ones, empty, because that's how cheap they were. And, or they went down to Sears and Roebuck Company, to their discount basement, and gave me a pair of shoes that were like 3 sizes too small. And here, Merry Christmas. But the whole point is they had a couple kids. Yeah. Okay? And when they died, they inherited all the money. Now, they were multimillionaires. They were so cheap they wouldn't even get a divorce. They hated each other. They hardly would talk to each other, but they wouldn't get a divorce because they would have to separate their property. They lived like somebody that lived on welfare. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, that's how cheap they both were. I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah. Well, there's such a thing as hoarding, and people sometimes hoard things they don't even use. Well, people can hoard money just because the more the numbers are, the better they feel. And there's never enough, but it's padding. If you ask a hoarder what their relationship is with a stack of newspaper in the room, they need to have it there, but they don't actually use it. So it's kind of the way it is.
I know, but the point I was trying to get, okay, their kids, my cousins, got all this money, and I'm not talking about a couple $100,000. I mean, I think they all each about $2-3 million each between the 5 of them. A couple of them, within a year, filed bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything that their parents worked their whole life, sacrificed everything for all this wealth. They die, the kids get it, and spend it like nothing. They don't even care. They just blew it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, they weren't allowed to use that money, so the deprivation made them go crazy. It's like trying to have a diet too long and you suddenly have donuts.
That's what happens with me. Medical condition, they put me on prednisone for a year. And
prednisone, yeah.
And the doctor made a mistake and wrote in the original prescription, and it was an ongoing prescription for a year. I was taking 80 milligrams of prednisone twice a day.
Whoa, that's really a high dosage.
Oh, I got the moon face. I gained 100 pounds of weight.
Oh, yeah.
And then I felt good. I mean, I felt so good. I would get on my motorcycle with my friends. We'd go do twisties. None of my friends could keep up with me because I lost all my fear, because it affects your brain really bad.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and I became a big butthole. And I didn't care. And then one day, I broke out in sweats. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. The heart banging. I started going paranoid. My wife takes me to the hospital. They thought I was dying. It turned out the prednisone, that was it. My body couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Then, I'll tell you how great this doctor was. He says, I'll get you off of it in 3 days. So
3 days on that dosage?
Right. And I
was in the medical field, so I'm kind of cringing.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. His partner, okay, the next day I was really feeling bad because they took me down from 80 milligrams a day down to like 10 milligrams once a day. Within one day, I was going through like major withdrawals. And that, I tell you, it's worse than if you were using cocaine. That's how bad it can be, or heroin.